It was brought to my attention the other day that many gyms are not teaching their students how to break fall. If you don't know what a break fall is, you are far behind on keeping yourself safe when somebody catches your kick and sends you flying up in the air. You need to learn how to do this. I'm going to teach you right now. I would like to thank the sponsor of today's episode, Bioptimizers, and their supplement, Masszymes. You may have heard about a protein lie, which basically says if you consume more protein, you are automatically going to get bigger muscles. But that is not true. Why not? Because your small intestine can only absorb protein that's been broken down into smaller building blocks called amino acids. And you need a sufficient supply of enzymes to help that process. Masszymes is a full spectrum enzyme formula with more proteins than any other commercially available. And you can try it all risk-free with their 365-day, no questions asked guarantee. You can head over to bioptimizers.com/Gabriel and use my promo code Gabriel10 to save 10%. So today we're talking about break falls. What is a break fall? That is when you are falling towards the ground and you utilize your arm or both arms, smashing them into the floor to absorb impact, to minimize the impact through your body into your limbs. Why do you need to know how to do this? Well, if you're doing Muay Thai, MMA, even kickboxing, and somebody, let's say, catches your round kick and then goes to sweep you, you could get elevated and you could land completely flat on your back and have the wind knocked out of you. Now, yes, you might have very good ability to tighten your stomach, breathe out, but I have personally swept a number of people where they land hard and they have to stop in the middle of the round because they're not able to get their wind back. We have seen numerous times in fights where people hit the ground and they take an extra second or two to get up because you can tell, again, that air has been knocked out of them. It is so important as well to protect your head, to make sure that the back of your head is not banging off the floor, especially if you are more of a beginner and you have not learned how to control your fall yet. A break fall is something that I use time and time again, and it is something that I learned from the martial art called Aikido. We have break falls, we have rolls, we have joint manipulation. Many of you know Aikido because you've probably heard of Steven Seagal, and while maybe in fights, it is not that pertinent to learn Aikido, break falls, I believe, are very important. So let's go through the fundamentals of a break fall and make sure by the time you leave today, you can go and practice this safely and start learning to protect yourself for when you get tossed or swept. So the very first thing that I teach my students, and these are just kids that I'm teaching, but I go break falls are so important, guys. We've got to drill them over and over. So the very first thing I teach them is learning just how to simply from this position roll backwards and keep their chin incredibly tight. Now, most adults won't have a problem with this, especially if they've already done a fight sport because they know not to keep their head way up here. They know to keep their chin down. So if you get hit in the face, it's more likely to come off your forehead. So you tuck your chin into your chest. You make sure that if somebody pushes it, it doesn't just roll backwards. It needs to stay very rigid, very tight. And you just go through that motion. Just making sure the back of your head is not going to touch. That's all you have to do to start. You could use that a few times just to warm up, get a couple rolls in. Now from there, we're going to add in the actual slapping motion. We always go full extension on the arms, minus just that complete straight out. Same as when we throw a punch, right? We don't lock our arms fully. We always stop just a little shy. So we're going to maintain that same motion. We're going to keep our arms up here to start. It's always a good idea because, you know, if we were fighting or something, our hands would be here anyway. So start them up in this chamber position. What we want to have happen is right about here. Just when our lower back starts to touch the ground, we start extending outwards. So by the time we get to the middle of the back, we're already hitting the floor. Now from here, as I said, we have that full extension. We're going to go palms down, just like a high five, because we don't want bones hitting the floor. We want the cushy side of our hand hitting. We come out with almost that full extension. We want right around hip level. If we go too low, we're just going to force ourselves further back. But if we go too high, we start to lose power. So right about there. So after they've done a couple tip backs and they've just rolled a few times, now I have them start this motion. And they breathe out every time. And that should not take you too long to get down. If you have any martial arts experience, you will get that very fast. It's a very safe way to learn because you're already connected to the floor and there's no me falling on my back, but we will get to that. The next thing that I like to have them do is prop themselves up to about here. Just balls of the feet on the ground, heels to the glutes, arms crossed, and now when they tip backwards, it's just gonna be a little bit faster. But again, same thing, breathe out, chin tucked, slap the ground, and that's it. Now, this is where things are gonna start getting a little more complicated. The next way that I like to increase the difficulty is have them do a full stand-up. The full stand-up, we're not gonna tip backwards like we're a falling tree. We're very simply gonna squat down to this motion and throw ourselves backwards. But I like to challenge the students who can do this, and I say, let's try on one foot. So you come all the way up. I know you guys can't see my head, but it doesn't really matter right now. Leg extended in front, arms ready. A lot of times they teach cross. They don't need to be crossed. They can just be up sort of in a guard. And I just come down in a one leg squat, whoop, and I slap the floor. And that's all you need to be able to accomplish to get to the next stage. The main thing that we're trying to do there, the main 3 points that I want you to keep in mind, sort of going check, 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 before you move on to this next step is number 1, your head is not shifting at all. It is locked in. Number 2, you are remembering to breathe out. And number 3, the impact that you're putting into your arms feels fairly substantial. You may feel a little bit of impact coming through the forearm here, but really try to focus it as much as you can into your palm. That's where we want to really slap hard. The harder we slap, the less impact our body takes when it actually hits the floor. So now we move into the next stage. And this is where things get difficult because the reality of getting swept is you do not have time to gracefully lower yourself to the floor. You get your standing leg kicked out, you all of a sudden find your body way up here in the ground, way down here, and you're just free falling. And one of the worst things that we can do, but is the most natural, is to put our elbows out and end up landing like this. Why is this so bad? Well, the first reason is it's going to make the head whip, the head snap back, so much more likely. And while yes, we are elevated, and there's less chance our head is actually going to bounce off the floor right from here, when we hit, boom, and our head snaps, it can still touch, but we also don't want to get any neck aggravation. So we want to make sure we avoid putting those arms back. In addition, if for some reason we're doing some sparring on a slightly hard surface and we come down on our elbows, that is just going to be massive pain. The whole point of the break fall is to minimize impact on bones. We don't want bones hitting into the sharp, hard surface. We want to find cushion in other elements, so we don't let the head hit. We don't let the elbows hit. We don't flip our hands upside down and let the knuckles hit. We want to stand up, go, oh, that stung because I smashed my hands into the floor, but that sensation goes away. It doesn't last for 3 or 4 days because something is significantly bruised. So the next way that we want to make this harder now is we want to prop ourselves up here and we're just going to do a little jump. In that little jump, we're going to kick our legs out and we're going to land on our back. Now, obviously, adding the break fall is very, very beneficial. But if you can just remember chin tucked and breath out, even if the impact sounds hard, it's still going to be okay. And you notice how I just turned slightly to my side so that my spine didn't smash into the floor. You can do that a little bit as well. We're talking very slight. But once I add the break fall in, I'll be less scared. This is not a soft surface, a little carpet, but it's not very soft. So I was just being cautious. But right from here, I just toss my legs up and I give my little slap. If I can do that from there, once I start adding things like gloves in and a real padded floor, it is so much easier. And something that I have learned throughout the years is a break fall is so much more fun to do with these. When I have these on and I come down, I just bang. Usually end up hammer fisting the floor because I can't really use this side. So I just hammer fist the floor. There's cushion all across there. I can slap as hard as I want and I will be safe, provided I do everything proper. So you guys can take that drilling that I just showed you and you can practice it over and over and over until you start being able to toss yourself up in the air like I did there. And then again, when that point comes where somebody tips you over, you will be less likely to actually get hurt. And then in addition, there are other times where you might want to use this. You might not end up free falling, but if somebody catches your front kick and pushes you backwards and you end up kind of going tip back, you can come through and do something like your break fall with your roll. All of the Aikido moves, even though they're not super practical for fight sports in terms of joint manipulation and things like that, they are actually beneficial. I'm going to tell you guys a quick story as well about the Aikido roll, right? It doesn't look like much here, but I ended up doing that when I was in Thailand, when I was on my scooter. I was on my scooter, I was going around a corner, and for some reason there was a bunch of gravel on the ground that day. And my scooter started to slide out. I tried to adjust, the wheel got all caught up, ended up flipping over top the handlebars mid-air. Probably wasn't going very fast. I would assume by the point I already started slowing down in the turn and everything, maybe 10 kilometers an hour. I had probably been going about 30, but you slow up dramatically. But I went over the handlebars, did a break fall on the concrete, popped up, literally did that. I was like checking for injuries and went, wow, I just went over the handlebars of my scooter, landed on concrete, and I'm not injured. And went back to the gym later that day and did a training session. So Aikido has its place. Break falls have their place. If you don't learn how to do them, at some point you're going to get swept. You're going to get the wind knocked out of you or slightly knocked out of you. You're going to have to continue in the sparring round or your fight being a little worse for wear. That is why we drill this over and over and over and over and over. How often would I say you need to take time to practice? Maybe 3 minutes. Take 3 minutes in a training session. If you're doing some solo work at home and you have a padded floor, perfect. That's all you need. So there's some break falls for you. Hope this helps you learn how to protect yourself when you're free falling in a sparring match, or even if you're just kicking pads or the bag. You go to throw a kick, your other foot, your standing foot kicks out from under you or lifts off the floor, you're flying up, you're gonna fall, break fall.